I drove 4 hours to Seabriar Cove craving silence, but what I found was a violation staked right into the sandy soil of my front lawn. A pristine white sign announced that my sanctuary was for sale, and a heavy lockbox clamped the door handle like a handcuff. Through the front window, I saw unfamiliar beige furniture arranged in a living room that was supposed to be empty. Someone had been inside, and they had already priced my life. The drive to Seabriar Cove usually took me 4 hours, but today I had made it in 3.5, fueled by a desperate need for silence. My life in the city was a relentless grid of consulting deadlines, airport lounges, and the kind of high-stakes problem-solving that left my brain feeling like a wrung-out sponge. This week was supposed to be different. This week was mine. I had cleared my calendar, set my email to an auto-reply that firmly stated I was unreachable, and pointed my car toward the ocean. My cottage was not a mansion. It was a restored craftsman bungalow set back from the dunes, a place I had bought 5 years ago with the first significant bonus check I had ever earned. It was the only thing I owned that did not feel temporary. I had sanded the floors myself. I had chosen the exact shade of sea glass blue for the kitchen tiles. It was the one place on earth where I did not have to be Bella Griffin, the fixer, the check writer, or the responsible daughter. I could just be Bella. I turned onto the gravel driveway, the tires crunching in a rhythm that usually signaled my blood pressure to drop. But as the house came into view through the wind-twisted cypress trees, my foot slammed onto the brake. The car skidded to a halt, kicking up a cloud of dust. I stared through the windshield, certain for a moment that I had taken a wrong turn or that exhaustion was causing hallucinations. Staked firmly into the sandy soil of my front lawn, right next to the walkway I had paved last summer, was a wooden post. Swinging from the arm of the post was a pristine, glossy sign, Marrow and Slate Luxury Realty, for sale. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I turned off the ignition and stepped out of the car, the ocean breeze hitting my face, but I felt numb. I walked toward the sign as if it were a bomb that might detonate. It looked official. It looked expensive. I looked past the sign to the house. There was a heavy gray combination lockbox clamped around the brass handle of my front door. I stood there, my car door still open, my bag still in the trunk. The absurdity of it made me dizzy. I owned this house. I held the deed. I paid the taxes. I had not spoken to a realtor in 5 years. Before I could process the violation, a white SUV with tinted windows turned into the driveway behind my car. It was polished and aggressive, the kind of vehicle that cost more than my first apartment. A woman stepped out. She was dressed in a sharp navy blazer and cream trousers, her hair pulled back in a severe, elegant knot. She held a leather portfolio and checked her watch. Before looking up at me, she offered a practiced, professional smile, though her eyes scanned my jeans and windbreaker with a hint of dismissal. "Good afternoon," she said. Her voice was smooth, trained to soothe nervous clients. "You must be the property manager. I am glad you are here early. I wanted to do a quick sweep before the photographer comes back for the twilight shots." I stared at her. My voice felt stuck in my throat, trapped under layers of shock. "I am not the property manager." I said, "I am the owner." The woman paused. Her smile did not drop, but it froze in place. She tilted her head slightly, as if I had spoken in a language she did not understand. "I am sorry," she said, letting out a small, confused laugh. "I think there is a misunderstanding. I am Tessa Rowan. I am the listing agent. I have been working with the family representative for the past week. We have the listing agreement signed and executed, the family representative." The phrase hit me like a physical blow. The cold ocean wind suddenly felt freezing. "I am Bella Griffin," I said, my voice hardening. "This is my house. I am the sole owner. I did not hire you. I did not hire Marrow and Slate, and I certainly did not authorize a sale." Tessa Rowan frowned, her professional mask slipping just enough to reveal genuine confusion. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a sleek tablet. She tapped on the screen for a moment, her brow furrowing. "The seller is listed as Bella Griffin," she said, looking at her screen and then back at me. "But the situation was described as urgent. a distressed asset liquidation. The gentleman who provided the access codes and the signed paperwork was very clear that the owner would not be present and that he was handling the transaction on her behalf due to medical incapacity. Medical incapacity? Who? I demanded. Who gave you the codes? Tessa hesitated. She took a half step back, realizing that the situation was volatile. I would need to check my file for the specific name of the contact, she said, her tone shifting from friendly to guarded. But we have a signed listing agreement. We have keys. We have already staged the property. Staged. I turned around and marched up the walkway. I punched in my personal code on the digital keypad I had installed, ignoring the Realtor's lockbox that hung like a parasite on the handle. The door beeped and unlocked. I pushed it open and stopped dead. My living room was gone. My comfortable, overstuffed navy sofa was missing. My eclectic collection of driftwood art and local paintings had been taken down. In their place stood beige linen love seats that looked like they had never been sat on. A glass coffee table held a generic arrangement of white orchids. The room smelled of lavender and chemicals, not the salt air and old wood I loved. They had erased me. I walked into the kitchen. My coffee mug collection was gone, replaced by a single white bowl filled with green apples. I went to the hallway. The photos of my college graduation and my trips to Europe had been removed from the walls. The nail holes hastily filled and painted over. I felt sick, a deep, churning nausea that had nothing to do with the long drive. This was not a mistake. This was an invasion. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the real estate app I sometimes use to track market values. I typed in my address. There it was. My house. Listed for $1.2 million. Seller motivated. Accepting preemptive offers. I scrolled through the photos. They were beautiful. High-resolution images that made my home look like a hotel. But then I stopped. There was a photo of my master closet. The door was open, showing the custom shelving I had installed. I never left that door open, and I certainly never posted photos of my private dressing area online. Someone had been here. Someone had taken their time. I turned back to the front door where Tessa Rowan was standing on the threshold, looking unsure of whether to enter or call the police. "Take the sign down," I said. My voice was shaking, not with fear, but with a rage so hot it felt cold. "Ms. Griffin," Tessa began, holding up a hand. "I cannot just take the sign down based on a verbal conversation. I have a legal contract with the seller. If you are indeed the owner, and there is a dispute regarding authority, we need to sort that out through the proper channels. But right now, this is an active listing. I am not a dispute," I said. "I am the person on the deed. Get off my porch." Tessa tightened her jaw. She was a professional, and she likely dealt with difficult families often, but she could see I was not unstable. I was furious. "I will call my broker," she said stiffly, "and I will double-check the file. But until then, please do not interfere with the staging furniture. It is rented." She turned and walked back to her SUV. I watched her drive away. Then I slammed the front door and locked it. I stood in the silence of the beige living room, my heart pounding in my ears. I dialed my sister. Kara answered on the second ring. Her voice was bright, too loud, surrounded by the background noise of cartoons and children shouting. "Hey, Auntie Bella," she chirped. "We did not expect to hear from you until next week. I thought you were in deep work mode." "What did you do?" I asked. There was a pause. The background noise seemed to fade, as if she had stepped into another room. "I do not know what you mean," Kara said. Her voice had dropped an octave. "I am at the beach house, Kara. There is a for sale sign on the lawn. There is a lockbox on my door. My furniture is gone." Kara let out a nervous, airy laugh. "Oh, God, Bella, you are so dramatic. It is just a miscommunication." "A miscommunication?" I repeated. "A realtor just told me she has a signed contract. She told me the owner is medically incapacitated." Kara sighed, the sound of someone who feels unfairly burdened. "Look, Mom is under a lot of stress, okay? We had a financial blow, a big one. We just needed options. We were just looking into what the equity might be worth. No one actually sold anything. You listed my house." "Kara, without asking me, We did not think you would be there, she snapped, her tone flipping from defensive to accusatory. You never go there in the spring. You are always so busy with your precious consulting gigs. Mom and Gordon are drowning. Bella, drowning, and you are sitting on this asset that you use maybe 3 weeks a year. It is my house, I said, gripping the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. Not the family's house. Mine. Gordon said it was a temporary solution, Kara said, her voice wavering slightly. Just to show liquidity, to satisfy some creditors. We were going to take it off the market as soon as the bridge loan cleared. It is not a big deal. Who signed my name? I asked. Silence. Kara? Who signed my name on the listing agreement? You need to talk to Mom, she said. She is at the cafe down by the marina. She wanted to tell you herself, but you are always so impossible to reach. She hung up. I stared at the phone. My hand was shaking. I wanted to scream, to throw the vase of fake white orchids through the window. But I forced myself to breathe. I was a consultant. I fixed broken companies. I found rot in corporate structures and cut it out. I could not lose my head now. I grabbed my keys and walked back out to my car. The waterfront cafe was a tourist trap with overpriced lobster rolls and a view of the harbor that was undeniably beautiful. I found my mother, Diane, sitting at a table near the railing. She was wearing an oversized sun hat and sunglasses, looking like a celebrity trying to avoid paparazzi. When she saw me approaching, she stood up and opened her arms. Bella, she cried out, her voice thick with performative affection. Oh, honey, look at you. You look so tired. You work too hard. I did not hug her back. I stood on the opposite side of the table, my hands in my pockets. Sit down. Mom, Diane's smile faltered. She sat, adjusting her silk scarf nervously. I spoke to Kara. I said. Diane sighed and reached across the table to pat my hand. I pulled it away. Kara worries too much, Diane said. She blows things out of proportion. We are just going through a little rough patch. Sweetie, the business, well, the import market is terrible right now. Gordon is doing everything he can. So you decided to sell my house? I asked. Diane flinched at the word sell. No, she said quickly. Not sell. We listed it. It is a strategy. Gordon explained it to me. If we show the banks that the family has assets, that we have potential capital, they back off. It is just on paper. Bella, it is not real. A woman named Tessa Rowan thinks it is real. I said, she has keys. She has a contract. She thinks I am mentally incapacitated. Diane looked away, staring out at the boats bobbing in the water. Gordon handled the paperwork. You know how he is. He just wanted to protect us. He wanted to protect you, too. If we go under, Bella, it affects everyone, the reputation of the family. I am not part of Pike Maritime Imports. I said, my finances are separate. My house is separate. Families share burdens. A deep voice boomed from behind me. I turned to see Gordon Pike standing there. He was a large man, taking up space with an air of entitlement that had always rubbed me the wrong way. He wore a linen suit that was slightly wrinkled, and his face was flushed. He pulled out a chair and sat down without asking. Hello, Bella, he said. I see you found the sign. You had no right, I said. Gordon chuckled. A low, dismissive sound. Right? We are talking about survival, Bella. Your mother is sick with worry. I am working 18 hours a day, and you are hoarding a beach house you visit once a quarter. It is selfish. I stared at him. This was the dynamic. It had always been the dynamic. I was the selfish one because I had built something of my own. They were the victims because they spent money they did not have. Who signed my name? I asked again, looking directly at Gordon. He did not blink. We have power of attorney. Bella. For emergencies. You signed it years ago. Do you not remember? I felt a cold prickle of fear at the base of my neck. I had never signed a power of attorney, I was sure of it. I was meticulous with my legal documents. I never signed that. I said, Gordon shrugged, picking up a menu. You forget things. You are busy. Look, the listing is just a placeholder. we get a cash offer. We show it to the bank, we get our loan, and we cancel the sale. No harm done. The house stays yours. We just need to borrow the credibility of the asset for 30 days. And if someone buys it, I asked, if this Tessa woman brings you a contract tomorrow, then we cross that bridge when we get there, Gordon said, signaling for a waiter. But do not make a scene, Bella. Do not embarrass your mother in this town. We are well known here. If you start screaming fraud, you ruin us. Is that what you want? To put your mother on the street over a beach house you do not even live in? Diane sniffled, wiping her eyes under her sunglasses. Please, Bella. Just for a few weeks. Just until the loan comes through. I looked at them. My mother, wilting and manipulative. My stepfather, bullying and calm. They were a wall of dysfunction I had spent my entire adult life trying to climb over. I stood up. Take the listing down. I said, today, or I will. Gordon did not look up from the menu. Sit down, Bella. Have some lunch. You look like you need to eat. I walked away. I could feel their eyes on my back, but I did not turn around. I needed to get out of there before I said something I couldn't take back, or worse, before I started to believe them. I drove back to the house, my mind racing. Gordon's mention of a power of attorney terrified me. If they had a document that looked real, even if it was forged, they could do almost anything. They could drain my accounts. They could take out loans in my name. I parked the car and ran inside, ignoring the beige furniture and the smell of staging chemicals. I went straight to the third bedroom, which I used as a home office. I had a heavy fireproof file box tucked into the back of the closet, hidden behind a stack of winter blankets. I pulled the blankets aside. The box was there. I dragged it out and keyed in the combination. The latch clicked open. My heart sank. The box felt light, too light. I flipped through the hanging folders. My birth certificate was there. My passport was there. But the folder marked property deeds was empty. The folder marked insurance riders was empty. The thick envelope where I kept the receipts for the renovation, the roof, the floors, the kitchen, was gone. Someone had scrubbed the box. They had taken every piece of paper that proved I owned this house, every document a person would need to impersonate me or build a believable file for a sale. This was not a sudden decision. This was not a panic move made yesterday. You did not find a fireproof box hidden in the back of a guest room closet by accident. You had to hunt for it. I sat back on my heels, the empty folders resting in my lap. Gordon had said, families share burdens, but this was not sharing. This was theft, and it felt predatory. I pulled out my phone and found the number for Marrow and Slate Luxury Realty. I did not care that it was after business hours. Tessa Rowan answered on the third ring. Rowan, she said. Her voice clipped. It is Bella Griffin. I said, I want to see the listing agreement. There was a long silence on the other end. Ms. Griffin, Tessa said slowly. I spoke to my broker. We are reviewing the file. I do not want a review. I said, I want you to email me the PDF of the agreement you say I signed, and I want to see the identification the seller provided. I cannot release client documents without verification. Tessa said, I am the client, I shouted, losing my composure for the first time. If that signature is mine, show it to me. Tessa sighed. Look, the seller provided a driver's license and a notarized power of attorney. The paperwork looked legitimate, but, given your reaction today, I am going to pull the county records first thing in the morning. If there is a discrepancy, we will address it. Send me the document. I said, I can't. She said, not yet. I need to protect the brokerage until I know who is actually lying. She hung up. I sat in the darkening office, the shadows lengthening across the floor. I felt trapped. My own family had constructed a reality where I did not exist, or where I existed only as a signature they could forge. I opened my laptop. The battery was low, but I didn't care. I connected to the house Wi-Fi and navigated to the county clerk's property portal. It was a clunky government-run website that I hadn't looked at since I bought the place. I typed in my parcel number. The screen refreshed. Owner, Bella Griffin. Status, active. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. The title was still in my name. They hadn't transferred it yet. But then my eyes drifted down the page to the section labeled Recent Activity. Usually, this section was empty, listing only tax assessments. But there, at the very top of the list, was a line item dated 3 days ago. Document number, pending, type, POA, REC, status, indexing. My stomach dropped. POA, power of attorney. It wasn't just Gordon talking. They had filed something. They had walked into a county office or submitted something electronically that was currently sitting in a queue, waiting to become legal fact. Once it was indexed, once it was official, Gordon would legally be me. He could sign the deed over to anyone he wanted. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. It was pitch black outside now. The ocean roared in the distance, a sound that usually comforted me but now sounded like a threat. I was alone in a house that was staged for someone else's life, fighting a war against the people who were supposed to love me. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was a voicemail. I hadn't heard it ring. I picked it up. The number was blocked. Unknown caller. I pressed play. The voice was low, male, and calm. It wasn't Gordon. It wasn't anyone I recognized. "Stop calling the agent," the voice said. "You are going to embarrass your mother." Click. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was worse. It was the voice of a man who sounded like he was in charge, a man who felt entitled to manage me, to scold me like a child who was making a fuss at a dinner party. I looked at the phone, then at the dark window. I wasn't just up against my family's incompetence anymore. I was up against something organized, and they were already inside the gates. The next morning, the fog hung heavy over Seabriar Cove, turning the world into a wash of gray dampness that matched the pit in my stomach. I had not slept. I had spent the night pacing the beige, staged living room of my own house, listening to the wind rattle the windows and waiting for the sun to rise so I could storm the offices of Marrow and Slate. I arrived at the brokerage at 9 o'clock sharp. It was a sleek, glass-fronted building on the main street, designed to intimidate anyone who couldn't afford a 7-figure second home. I walked past the reception desk without waiting to be announced and found Tessa Rowan's office in the back. She looked up as I entered, and I saw a flicker of genuine apprehension in her eyes. She was not the polished, dismissive agent she had been in my driveway yesterday. She looked tired, and there were files spread across her desk. "Ms. Griffin," she said, standing up. "I was just about to call you." I closed the door behind me and sat down. I did not want coffee. I did not want pleasantries. "Show me the signature," I said. Tessa hesitated for a split second, then turned a monitor toward me. On the screen was a digital scan of a listing agreement. It was standard boilerplate legal text, but my eyes went straight to the bottom of the last page. There, on the line marked Owner, was a scrawl that read Bella Griffin. It was not my signature. It wasn't even a good attempt. My signature is sharp, angular, a result of signing thousands of consulting contracts. This was loopy, hesitant, the signature of someone trying too hard to look casual. "That is a forgery," I said, pointing at the screen. "And a bad one." Tessa nodded slowly. She sat back in her chair, clasping her hands. "I pulled the county records this morning," she said quietly. "I compared the signature on your original deed from 5 years ago to this. They do not match, not even close. So take the listing down." I said. "It is already down," she said. "I suspended it an hour ago, but, Ms. Griffin, there is something you need to know about how this came to us." I waited. "This didn't come through a standard walk-in," Tessa said, lowering her voice. "It came through a referral partner we sometimes work with on distressed assets, a firm called Harborline Capital Solutions. They specialize in quick liquidity. Usually, they work with families who are in probate or facing foreclosure. They provide bridge loans, and in exchange, they manage the sale of the asset to pay themselves back. Harborline," I repeated. The name sounded corporate and sterile, like a shell company designed to strip mine value. The representative from Harborline was very aggressive. Tessa continued. He pushed for a quick, off-market transaction. He told us the family wanted to avoid the embarrassment of a public sign, but that we needed to list it on the MLS for 24 hours to satisfy some lender requirement. He wanted us to accept a preemptive cash offer immediately. "Who is the representative?" I asked. "Evan Sutter." She said, "He provided the documentation. He provided the contact for the seller representative." The seller representative being my stepfather. I guessed. Tessa looked uncomfortable. "The contact name on the file is Gordon Pike, but the person communicating with us, handling the staging logistics, was a woman who identified herself as your personal assistant." I felt a chill run down my arms. I did not have a personal assistant. I handled my own scheduling, my own travel, and certainly my own property management. "I do not have an assistant," I said. Tessa's face paled slightly. She tapped a few keys and brought up an email chain. The address was generic. Assistant, begriffing mail, com. "She came to the house," Tessa said. "She met the stagers. She had the alarm code. Ms. Griffin. She knew which furniture to move to storage. She paid the staging deposit in cash." I stared at the screen. The violation I had felt yesterday deepened into something darker. This wasn't just Gordon bullying my mother into signing a paper. This was a cast of characters, a fake assistant, a predatory capital firm, a forged signature. "I need copies of everything," I said. "Every email, every text. I can't release the internal communications yet," Tessa said, her professional guard going back up. "Not until our legal team reviews the liability. But I will tell you this. Harborline is not happy." I pulled the listing. "They have called me 4 times this morning. They are claiming you are having a mental health crisis and that the sale must proceed to cover your medical debts." I stood up. My hands were shaking, but I clenched them into fists so she wouldn't see. "I am not the one having a crisis," I said, "but I am about to cause one." I left the office and walked out into the cold morning air. I needed to find Kara. My sister was staying at our parents' house, a sprawling, shingled Victorian on the north side of town that had always been too big for them to maintain. I drove there, my mind replaying Tessa's words: medical debts, mental health crisis. They were building a narrative to discredit me in case I fought back. I found Kara in the sunroom, scrolling through her phone while her 2 kids played in the backyard. When she saw me, she jumped, nearly dropping her device. "Bella," she said, her voice high and tight. "I didn't think you were coming by." I didn't sit down. I stood in the doorway, blocking her exit. "Harborline Capital Solutions," I said. Kara's face went blank, but her eyes darted away. "I don't know what that is. Don't lie to me." "Kara, I just came from the Realtor." "You know exactly who they are. They are the ones pushing the sale. They are the ones Gordon is working with." Kara stood up, crossing her arms defensively. "Look, I don't know the details of the financing, okay? Gordon handles the business stuff. I helped him with some emails. You helped him schedule an open house," I said, stepping closer. Kara flinched. "It wasn't supposed to be a real sale," she cried out. "It is leverage. Bella, how many times do I have to explain it? Mom and Gordon need a bridge loan. Harborline said they could advance the cash, but they needed collateral. They needed to show a pending asset sale to underwrite the risk. It is just paper. Once the loan funds next week, we cancel the listing, pay the fee, and everything goes back to normal." "And the open house?" I asked. "Just for show," Kara insisted. "To prove to the underwriters that there is market interest. No one was going to buy it." I pulled out my phone and opened my email. I had forwarded myself the screenshots Tessa had shown me, taking photos of her screen when she wasn't looking. I held the phone up to Kara's face. "Then why did the Realtor receive this email yesterday approving a showing for a cash buyer who wants a 10-day close?" I asked. "That is not leverage. Kara, that is a sale." Kara looked at the image, her mouth opening and closing. I didn't see that," Gordon said. "Gordon is lying to you." I said, cutting her off, "Or you are lying to yourself. You are helping them steal my house." Kara's face crumbled. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were tears of frustration. not remorse. "You don't understand," she shouted. "Mom is in trouble. Bella, real trouble. It's not just business debt, it's personal." "What kind of personal?" Kara wiped her face aggressively. "Gordon's import business. Pike Maritime. He tried to expand last year. He bought inventory he couldn't move. He leveraged the house, the cars, everything. And Mom. She co-signed the notes. All of them. I felt the blood drain from my face. My mother, who couldn't balance a checkbook, had signed her name to commercial debt." "How bad is it?" I asked. "Bad," Kara whispered. "Collectors are calling the house. They are threatening liens. Harborline was the only way out. They offered a lump sum that would clear the urgent debts, and they said we could use your house as the vehicle. So you sacrifice me," I said quietly, "to save Gordon's bad gamble." "You have so much," Kara screamed, her control finally snapping. "You have the career, the city apartment, the investments. You don't even need the beach house. We are drowning, and you are worried about a piece of property." I looked at my sister. I saw the envy that had been rotting under the surface for years. This wasn't just about money. It was about the fact that I had escaped the chaos of this family, and she had stayed. I turned and walked out. I couldn't look at her anymore. I needed to understand how they had gotten inside the house. Kara claimed she helped with emails, but she didn't have the technical skill to pull off the physical staging. I drove to the small cottage behind the dunes where Milo Henshaw lived. Milo had been my house manager for 4 years. He was a retired fisherman, 60 years old. Honest as the day was long, or so I had thought. I found him in his garage, sanding down an old skiff. When he saw me, he dropped the sanding block. His face went gray. "Ms. Griffin?" he stammered. "I thought you were in New York. Why is there a lockbox on my door?" "Milo?" I asked, my voice steady. Milo wiped his hands on a rag, looking everywhere but at me. "She said you sent her." He said, "The assistant. Ms. Leeds." "Ms. Leeds?" I asked. "Sarah Leeds. She called me on Tuesday. Said you were selling the place to cover a medical issue. Said you couldn't travel. She had your details." "Ms. Griffin?" She knew the alarm code. She knew about the leak we fixed in the roof last winter. She knew where the spare key was buried under the porch. I closed my eyes. Only my family knew those things. Gordon knew. "She offered me $500 cash to let the stagers in," Milo said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Said it was a rush job. I took it. I'm sorry. She seems so official. Describe her." I said, "Young," Milo said. "Maybe late 20s, dark hair, glasses, very businesslike, drove a nice car." It wasn't Kara. Kara was blonde and couldn't act businesslike to save her life. This was someone else, a professional. "Did she give you a number?" I asked. Milo nodded and pulled a crumpled business card from his pocket. It was a generic white card with black text. "Sarah Leeds, executive assistant." I took the card. There was a phone number and the same email address Tessa had shown me. "You are fired." "Milo," I said. Milo flinched as if I had hit him. "Ms. Griffin, please, give me my keys," I said. "And the garage opener. Now." He handed them over, his hands shaking. I didn't feel good about it. I liked Milo, but he had sold my security for $500. I couldn't afford weak links. I drove back to town and parked near the courthouse. I needed a lawyer, not a corporate lawyer from the city, but someone who knew how the dirt moved in Seabrier Cove. Raina Cole's office was above a bakery, smelling faintly of yeast and old paper. Raina was a woman my age, sharp-featured and intense, known for fighting zoning boards and messy divorces. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she tapped her pen against the desk. "It is a shadow closing," she said. "What does that mean?" I asked. Raina leaned forward. "It is a fraud tactic. They list the house to find a cash buyer, usually an investor who doesn't ask too many questions. They forge the deed transfer or use a fraudulent power of attorney. They rush the closing, get the wire transfer, and disappear. By the time the real owner finds out, the money is gone. The house is legally tangled in a title dispute, and the family members claim they were victims of a scam artist. But they are my family. I said, "That makes it easier," Raina said grimly. "They know your schedule. They know your personal details. And they know you will hesitate to send them to prison. Harborline is likely the architect. They find desperate families, offer them a solution, and then strip the assets. Gordon is the vessel." She looked at me. "You need to lock down your credit, right now. If they have your personal info, they aren't just selling the house, they are leveraging your identity." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Everything looked normal, but then I checked my credit monitoring service, an app I rarely opened. There was a notification from this morning. New inquiry. Sandbar Federal Credit Union. Mortgage. HELOC. My breath hitched. A HELOC. A home equity line of credit. "They are trying to double dip," Raina said. Seeing my expression, "They are trying to open a line of credit against the house while they try to sell it. If the sale falls through, they max out the credit line and leave you with the debt." I felt a wave of pure, white-hot anger. This wasn't desperation. This was distinct, calculated malice. They were trying to bankrupt me. "We need to stop it," I said. "We can file an injunction," Raina said. "But that takes a few days. We need to stop the bleeding now." I looked at the phone in my hand. I had an idea. It was dangerous. But I needed to flush them out. I needed to know exactly who was pulling the strings at Harborline. "I'm going to set a trap," I said. I left Raina's office and sat in my car. I took a deep breath and dialed Kara's number again. She answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. "Bella?" I made my voice sound small, defeated. "Kara, I'm at the house. I've been looking at the numbers." Silence on the other end. Then, cautiously, "What numbers?" "The market," I said. "You're right. I don't use the place enough. And if Mom is really in that much trouble, maybe selling isn't the worst idea." I could hear Kara exhale, a sound of massive relief. "Oh, Bella. Thank God. You are being sensible, but I want to do it right." I said, "If we are going to sell, I want to hear the offer. Is there really a buyer?" "Yes," Kara said. Too quickly. "Yes. Harborline said they have someone ready to go. Cash. Quick close." "Okay," I said. "Tell Gordon. Tell him I'm listening. But I need to move fast if I'm going to do this. I have to get back to the city on Monday." "I will tell him right now," Kara said. "Bella, thank you. You are saving us." She hung up. I sat there and waited. I watched the clock on the dashboard. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. My phone rang. It wasn't Kara. It wasn't Gordon. It was a number with a local area code I didn't recognize. "Hello?" I answered. "Ms. Griffin? This is Evan Sutter. I'm calling from Harborline Capital Solutions." My heart hammered against my ribs. They were that fast. The pipeline from Kara to Gordon to Harborline was instantaneous. "Mr. Sutter," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "My sister tells me you have a solution for my property." "We do," Evan Sutter said. His voice was smooth, confident, the voice of a man who closed deals before breakfast. "We understand there has been some confusion regarding the listing, but we have a partner ready to execute a purchase agreement today. 1.1 million, cash, no contingencies. The listing price was 1.2. I said, "The market is softening." "Ms. Griffin," he said quickly, "and given the urgency of the family situation, we believe this is a very strong offer. We can wire the funds to your title company within 48 hours. He knew details I had never said out loud. He knew I was considering it, mere minutes after I told Kara. "Send me the offer," I said. "I will review it." "I will email it immediately." He said, "We look forward to helping you move on." I hung up. I had him. I had proof that Harborline was directly coordinating with my family to pressure me. My phone buzzed again. A text from Tessa Rowan. "Bella, urgent." I had my IT guy look at the email headers from the assistant. It is a spoofing domain. They bought the domain https google.com search QQB Griffin Consulting calm, missing the I. 3 months ago. This has been planned for a long time. 3 months. I stared at the text. 3 months ago. I had been at a family barbecue. I had mentioned I was thinking of traveling to Europe in the spring. Gordon had asked a lot of questions about my schedule. They had been planning this since then. I needed one more piece of evidence. I needed to know exactly what Gordon was telling them. I drove to my parents' house. I knew Gordon was at his office at the marina, and Kara had mentioned she was taking the kids to the movies to get them out of the house. The driveway was empty, except for my mother's sedan. I walked up to the front door and let myself in with my key. "Mom?" I called out. Silence. The house was still, filled with the clutter of decades. I walked to the kitchen. Empty. I checked the living room. Empty. Then I saw through the window that my mother was in the garden, deadheading roses with a kind of manic intensity. She didn't see me. I walked back out the front door and went to her car. It was unlocked. My mother never locked anything. She lived in a bubble of denial where bad things didn't happen to her. I opened the passenger door and popped the glove compartment. It was filled with napkins, old registration cards, and a few prescription bottles. But underneath a stack of maps, I found a thick envelope. I pulled it out. It was a draft appraisal for my beach house. I opened it. The pages were covered in handwritten notes in red ink. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was Gordon's. On the page listing the comparable sales, he had written, "Ignore these. Too high." On the page regarding access, he had written, "Private viewing only. Avoid owner contact at all costs." And at the very top of the front page, circled 3 times, "Push urgency. Use mental instability narrative if she pushes back." I stared at the words, mental instability narrative. They weren't just stealing my house. They were preparing to gaslight me, to tell the world I was crazy so that no one would believe me when I screamed thief. I took a photo of the document with my phone. Then I put it back exactly where I found it. I closed the glove compartment and stepped back from the car. The fog was lifting, but the world felt colder than ever. I had the evidence. I had the players. Now I just had to survive the game. My phone chimed with an email notification. From Evan Sutter. Subject, Purchase Agreement, 442. Dune Road. Time sensitive. I looked at the subject line. Time sensitive. They had no idea. I got back in my car and dialed Raina. "File the injunction," I said, "and get ready. I'm going to invite them to a closing they will never forget." The fluorescent lights of the county recorder's office hummed with a low, irritating buzz that seemed to vibrate right against my skull. I stood at the counter next to Raina Cole, watching her slide a thick stack of paperwork under the plexiglass divider. The clerk, a woman with tired eyes and a sweater draped over her shoulders, stamped the top page with a heavy, rhythmic thud. "This is a notice of potential fraud," Raina said, her voice projecting clearly through the small speaking hole. "We are also filing a formal request to freeze any transfer attempts connected to this parcel number. We have reason to believe a fraudulent instrument is currently in the indexing queue." The clerk looked at me, then down at the papers. "You are the owner of record?" she asked. "I am," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were gripping the edge of the counter so hard my fingers were numb. "We need to see ID," the clerk said. I slid my driver's license under the glass. She compared the photo to my face, then back to the screen. "Okay," she said. "The freeze is entered. It puts a flag on the title. If anyone tries to record a deed or a mortgage against this property, the system will kick it back for manual review. It buys you time, but it does not remove whatever is already in the pipe. If that pending document is valid on its face, it will eventually post. You will have to fight it in court to get it expunged." "Thank you," I said. We walked out into the bright, harsh sunlight of the parking lot. I felt a strange mix of relief and nausea. We had put up a shield, but the arrow was already in the air. "You need to confront them," Raina said, leaning against her car. "Now that the freeze is on, the next time Harborline tries to push a button, it is not going to work. They are going to panic. You need to be the one to break the news. See how they react." "I know." I said, "I am going to the house. Raina nodded. I will be at my office digging into Harborline's corporate structure. I want to see who Evan Sutter actually answers to. Be careful, Bella. When people realize they are trapped, they stop acting like family. I drove to my parents' house with the windows down, letting the cold air sting my face. I needed to be sharp. I needed to be cold. The Victorian house loomed at the end of the street, a monument to faded grandeur. The paint was peeling slightly on the eaves, and the garden was overgrown in a way that suggested neglect disguised as a wild aesthetic. I parked and walked up the steps, bypassing the front door to go around to the side entrance that led into the kitchen. I found my mother, Diane, sitting at the breakfast table. She was staring into a mug of tea that had stopped steaming long ago. When the door clicked shut behind me, she jumped, her hand flying to her chest. Bella, she breathed. You startled me. I pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down. I did not take off my coat. I just came from the county recorder. I said, I put a fraud alert on the beach house. No one can sell it. No one can borrow against it. Diane's face crumpled. It wasn't anger. It was a look of pure, terrified exhaustion. She slumped in her chair, looking suddenly very old. Why are you doing this? She asked, her voice trembling. We were so close to fixing everything. Fixing it for who? I asked. For Gordon? For us, Diane said. For the family. There is no us in my grant deed. Mom, there is just me. Diane looked up, her eyes wet. You have always been so hard. Bella, even as a little girl, you kept your toys separate. You saved your allowance while Kara spent hers. You always had to be the one who didn't need anyone. I worked. I said, I didn't just save. I worked. And we sacrificed, she cried out, slamming her hand weakly on the table. Do you think you got where you are by yourself? Who paid for your piano lessons? Who drove you to the prep school? Who co-signed your first student loan? We poured everything into you girls. And now, when we need help, when we are literally drowning, you treat your own home like a fortress we are not allowed to enter. I stared at her. The narrative was breathtaking. In her mind, my success was a dividend they were entitled to collect. You did not ask for help. I said quietly, you stole. You forged my name. You sent a stranger into my home to pack up my life. That is not asking for help. That is a crime. It was a bridge loan, Diane insisted, tears spilling over. Just a few months. Gordon had it all worked out. We would pay it back with interest. You wouldn't even have known. I wouldn't have known, I repeated. You were going to sell my house and I wouldn't have known? Gordon said he could buy it back. She sobbed. Before you came down for the summer, he had a plan. The back door opened, and Gordon walked in. He was wearing his blazer, looking flushed but composed. He must have seen my car. He didn't look surprised to see me. He looked like a man arriving at a board meeting he intended to dominate. Diane, go upstairs, Gordon said gently. She looked at him, then at me, and fled the room, her sobs echoing in the hallway. Gordon walked to the counter and poured himself a glass of water. He took a long sip before turning to face me. You filed a notice, he said. That was aggressive. I am protecting my property. I said. Gordon sighed, placing the glass down with a precise click. Bella, let's stop the drama. Let's look at the numbers. He pulled a chair out and sat, leaning forward with his elbows on the table. His tone was managerial, reasonable. It was the voice he used when he was trying to sell a shipment of questionable cargo. Here is the reality. He said, Pike Maritime is in a liquidity crunch. It is temporary, but it is severe. The inventory is stuck in customs in Rotterdam. Once it clears, we are flush. But right now, we have exposure. Serious exposure. Not we. I said, you? Gordon ignored me. The deal with Harborline is a lifeline. They are offering $1.1 million for the beach house. That clears the debt. It saves this house. It saves your mother's credit. It saves my business. And it leaves me with nothing. I said, no, Gordon said, shaking his head as if I were missing the point. It leaves you with the family intact. And look, I will sign a promissory note. I will pay you back the full equity over 5 years, with 5% interest. You can buy another beach house. Maybe something smaller, something easier to manage. You are hardly ever here anyway. I looked at him. He was negotiating my life away as if it were a line item on a spreadsheet. He didn't see the house as my sanctuary. He saw it as a dormant asset that I was selfishly refusing to liquidate. I am not a bank. Gordon, I said, and I am not your investor. You are a daughter, he said, his voice dropping, losing some of its warmth. An ungrateful one at that. We raised you. We gave you the platform to go out and become this high-powered consultant, and now you watch us sink? Over a building? It is not about the building, I said. It is about the fact that you lied. You impersonated me. You have been planning this for months. Gordon's eyes narrowed. It was not months. It was a sudden opportunity. I reached into my bag and pulled out the printout Raina had found for me an hour ago. It was a calendar log from a public meeting scheduler. Then why were you meeting with Evan Sutter from Harborline back in January? I asked. Gordon looked at the paper. He didn't flinch. Consulting, he said. You were planning to liquidate me in January. I said, this wasn't an emergency. This was a strategy. You leveraged yourself to the hilt, knowing you had my house as a backup parachute. Gordon sat back. His face hardened. The mask of the benevolent patriarch slipped, revealing the cold, calculating operator underneath. You have too much, Bella, he said softly. It is not natural. You come down here in your expensive car, with your designer clothes, and you look at us like we are peasants. You think you are better than this family. I don't think I am better. I said, I just think I am separate. That is the problem, Gordon said. You think you can cut yourself off, but you can't. You are Pike. You are Griffin. You are part of this mess whether you like it or not. I stood up. The freeze stays, I said, and if you try to override it, I will have you arrested. Gordon laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Arrested? You going to put your mother in handcuffs? Because she is the one who signed the papers. Bella, not me. I made sure of that. The threat hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. He had used Diane as a human shield. I walked out of the kitchen. I needed air. I found Kara in the driveway. She was buckling her youngest into the car seat. When she saw me, she froze. She looked terrifyingly like Diane. Scared, resentful, and trapped. Kara. I said, I don't want to talk, she said, reaching for the driver's door. You witnessed it, didn't you? I asked. Kara stopped. She didn't turn around. Gordon told me it was a loan modification, she whispered. I walked around the car so I could see her face. You witnessed a signature. Kara. Whose signature? Kara looked down at her shoes. Mom's, she said. Mom signed my name? Kara nodded, tears leaking from her eyes. Gordon practiced with her, for hours. He made it a game. He said they needed to match your style so the bank wouldn't reject the forms for a variance. He said it was just a technicality, and you signed as the witness. I said, he told me to, Kara shouted, her voice cracking. He said if I didn't, the bank would foreclose on the big house. He said we would all be on the street. I was scared. Bella, I didn't read the text. I just signed the line that said, witness. And the ID? I asked. Tessa said the seller provided ID. Kara wiped her nose with her sleeve. Gordon asked for my license. He said he needed to scan it to prove I was a resident. I looked at my sister. She was 35 years old, but she was acting like a frightened teenager. She had let herself be used as a tool to dismantle my life because it was easier than asking questions. Did you know it was a sale? I asked. Kara hesitated. Then, in a voice so small I almost couldn't hear it, I knew it was something big, but I didn't want to know. I just wanted the creditors to stop calling. I stepped back. You need to get a lawyer. Kara, I said, because when this blows up, Gordon is going to blame you. I got in my car and drove away. My hands were shaking again. The picture was becoming clear, and it was uglier than I had imagined. Harborline wasn't just a predatory lender, they were architects of family destruction. They found the weak link: Gordon's greed, Diane's pliability, Kara's fear, and they handed them the weapons to take me down. I met Raina at a diner on the edge of town. She had her laptop open and a plate of untouched fries next to it. I found the pattern. Raina said as I sat down, "Tell me." I said, "Harborline Capital Solutions," Raina said, turning the screen toward me. "They target asset-rich, cash-poor families in coastal towns. They offer liquidity agreements, basically high-interest personal loans that are impossible to pay back. But here's the kicker. The loans are secured not by the borrower's home, but by future inheritance interests or family assets. They entrap the family." I said, "Exactly. They get the parents into debt. Then they point to the successful child's property as the way out. They provide the forms. They provide the consulting on how to transfer title. They don't do the forgery themselves. They just create the pressure cooker that makes the family do it. It is evil." I said, "It is profitable," Raina corrected, "and it is hard to prosecute because they can claim they were just a third-party buyer acting in good faith. They will say they had no idea your mother wasn't authorized, unless we prove they knew." I said, Raina nodded, "We need to prove they knew Diane wasn't you, that they were complicit in the impersonation." I thought about the staging, the beige furniture, the fake assistant, Tessa. I said, "The Realtor. She said the staging was billed to Pike Maritime." Raina's eyes lit up. If Harborline coordinated the staging, but the bill went to Gordon, there is a paper trail connecting them to the fraud logistics. I called Tessa. She picked up on the first ring. "I have the invoice," she said, breathless. "I was just about to email it to you. It is from a company called Elite Stage and Design. The bill tow is Pike Maritime Imports. But the ordered by contact? It is Evan Sutter." "Send it," I said. I looked at Raina. Evan Sutter ordered the staging furniture for a house he claimed he was just buying. Why would a buyer order the staging? Because he wasn't just buying. Raina said, "He was packaging the product. He was running the sale from both sides." "We have him." I said, "Not yet," Raina warned. "We have a link, but we need a confession, or a direct contradiction." I checked my watch. It was 2 p.m. "I'm going to hold an open house." I said, "What?" Raina asked. "I'm going to call Evan Sutter. I'm going to tell him I'm ready to sign the deal. I am going to invite him to the house to do a final walkthrough. I want him in the room. I want him to say it to my face." Raina smiled. A sharp, dangerous expression. "I will bring my recording equipment, and I have a friend in digital forensics. We can sweep for devices while he is there." I called Evan Sutter. "Mr. Sutter," I said, forcing a tremor into my voice. "It is Bella Griffin. Ms. Griffin." He answered smoothly. "Have you reviewed the purchase agreement?" "I have." I said, "It looks standard. I think I'm ready. But I want to meet you. I want to see the person who is buying my home. Can you come by at 4? I can make that work." He said. I hung up. I drove back to the beach house. I walked through the rooms, looking at the beige furniture that Evan Sutter had ordered. It felt like a stage set for a play I was about to ruin. Raina arrived at 3:30 with a man named Lewis, who carried a heavy backpack. Lewis didn't speak. He just started scanning the room with a handheld device, checking for bugs or cameras. "Clean," Lewis said. Raina sat in the corner of the dining room, her phone set to record, a notepad open. She looked like a witness. At 4 o'clock, a black sedan pulled into the driveway. Evan Sutter stepped out. He was younger than I expected, maybe late 30s, wearing a suit that was too shiny and a watch that cost more than my car. He looked around the property with a proprietary air. I opened the front door. "Mr. Sutter," I said. "Ms. Griffin," he said, flashing a bright, predatory smile. "A pleasure to finally meet. Beautiful property. Come in," I said. He walked into the living room, nodding at the furniture he had ordered. "I understand this is difficult," he said, turning to me. "Selling a family home is always emotional, but you are doing the right thing. Your mother speaks very highly of you." "My mother is a victim." I said, Sutter's smile didn't waver. We are all victims of the economy. Ms. Griffin. Harborline just tries to provide solutions. I walked to the kitchen island. I had placed the staging invoice Tessa had sent me on the counter. I have a question. I said, anything. Why did you order the staging furniture? I asked. Sutter paused. His eyes flicked to the paper on the counter. I am sorry? The invoice. I said, it lists you as the person who ordered the staging, but you are the buyer. Why would a buyer stage a house he hasn't bought yet? Unless you were already controlling the property? Sutter laughed. But it was tight. We often help sellers with presentation. It is part of our full-service concierge approach. We wanted to maximize the value for your family. By forging my signature? I asked. Sutter's face went cold. He took a step closer. Ms. Griffin, I think you are confused. We have a valid listing agreement. We have a valid power of attorney. If you are having second thoughts, that is fine. But do not accuse us of impropriety. We have done everything by the book. Which book? I asked. The one where you teach Gordon Pike how to practice his wife's signature? Sutter stopped smiling. You should be careful, he said softly. Your mother has signed a lot of documents, confession of judgment, personal guarantees. If this deal falls through, we don't just walk away. We execute on those guarantees. We take the Victorian house. We take the cars. We garnish your stepfather's wages. We ruin them. Is that what you want? I felt a flash of heat. He was admitting it. He was holding my family hostage. I want you to leave, I said. Sutter checked his watch. I will leave, but the closing is scheduled for tomorrow at noon. If you are not there, or if your authorized representative is not there, we will file a breach of contract suit, and we will win. He turned and walked out. I watched him drive away. My heart was pounding. Did you get that? I asked Raina. Every word, she said. He admitted to the leverage, but he is right about one thing. They have paperwork. We need to know exactly what that power of attorney says. As if on cue. My laptop on the dining table pinged. I walked over to it. I had left the county recorder's page open, set to auto-refresh every 15 minutes. The screen had changed. The line item that had said document number pending was gone. In its place was a new entry. Recorded document, 2025-44921. Type, durable power of attorney. Grantor, Bella Griffin. Grantee, Diane Pike. Date of execution, October 14th, 2024. I stared at the date, October 14th, Raina. Look at this. I said. Raina came over and looked at the screen. October 14th. Where were you on October 14th? I pulled out my phone and opened my calendar app. I scrolled back to October. I felt a cold, hard knot of triumph in my stomach. I was in London. I said. I was speaking at a conference. I have flight records. I have hotel receipts. I have a room full of witnesses. Raina smiled. You can't sign a notarized document in Seabriar Cove if you are in London, she said. I clicked on the document link to view the image. It loaded slowly, line by line. There it was. My name, my signature, the forged one. And next to it, the notary stamp, Bramblequill Notary Services. Commission expires, 2026. I looked at the signature. It was dated October 14th. They messed up. I said, they picked a date at random. And they picked the 1 week I wasn't in the country. Raina grabbed her bag. We have them on fraud. Definite, provable fraud. But we need to move fast. If the closing is tomorrow, they are going to try to use this document to sign the deed over. I looked at the screen one last time. The notary stamp was the final nail. Someone at Bramblequill had stamped this document. Someone had verified a signature that couldn't possibly exist. It wasn't just my family. It wasn't just Harborline. The rot went deeper. I am going to find that notary, I said. The glowing screen of my laptop felt like the only light source in the world. I sat at my dining table, the ocean wind rattling the window panes, staring at the notary stamp that had transformed a lie into a legal weapon. Bramble and Quill Notary Services. It sounded quaint, like a tea shop or a bookstore, but the commission number beneath the name was sharp and official. This stamp had validated a signature that wasn't mine. It had turned a forgery into a document that could strip me of my home. I looked at the date again. October 14th. I remembered October 14th perfectly. I had been in a conference room in London, watching rain streak against the glass of a high-rise, arguing about supply chain logistics with a client who refused to modernize. I had not been in Seabriar Cove. I had not been in the United States, and I certainly had not been signing my rights away to my mother. I grabbed my phone and dialed Raina. "I have the name," I said, "Bramble and Quill." "I am looking them up now," Raina said, the sound of keyboard clacking in the background. "It is a storefront in the next town over. They offer shipping, printing, and notary services. They also advertise remote online notarization." "Remote," I repeated. "It is how they got around you being out of the country," Raina said. "In fact, they probably used the fact that you were traveling to justify the request. They likely claimed you were stuck abroad and needed to execute the power of attorney urgently." "I am going there," I said. "Bella, be careful," Raina warned. "If they are part of the fraud, they might tip off Harborline." "I don't care," I said. "I want to see the face of the person who sold me out." I drove to Bramble and Quill with a cold, focused fury. It was located in a strip mall between a dry cleaner and a discount liquor store. The bell above the door jingled cheerfully as I walked in. The air smelled of toner and cardboard. A young man with gauges in his ears and a bored expression was standing behind the counter, sorting mail. "Can I help you?" he asked, not looking up. "I need to speak to the notary who was working on October 14th. I said. He looked up then, his eyes scanning my face. That would be Elias. "He is the owner. He is in the back. Get him," I said. The authority in my voice made the kid blink. He turned and knocked on a door labeled private. A moment later, a heavy-set man in a sweater vest emerged, wiping crumbs from his mouth. "Can I help you?" Elias asked. I pulled the printout of the power of attorney from my bag and slammed it onto the counter. "You notarize this," I said. Elias squinted at the document. He adjusted his glasses. "Yeah, standard POA. Remote session. What about it?" "I am Bella Griffin," I said. "That is my name on the document, but that is not my signature, and I was in London when you stamped this." Elias's face went pale. He looked from me to the paper. "I followed protocol," he said, his voice jumping an octave. "We used a secure platform. The signer passed the ID verification. She uploaded a driver's license. She answered the knowledge-based authentication questions. We did a video session. I saw her face. You saw a woman who claimed to be me." I said, "Show me the log." "I can't show you client records," Elias said, backing away. "I am the client," I shouted. "If that is my name, then that is my record. Show me the video. Elias, or I call the Secretary of State and file a complaint against your commission right now. And after that, I call the police." Elias swallowed hard. He went to his computer and typed furiously. He turned the monitor toward me. It was a screen capture from a video call. The woman in the frame had dark hair like mine. She was wearing glasses like the ones I sometimes wore for reading. The lighting was dim, deliberately so, but it wasn't me. It was a woman roughly my age, looking down at a document, nodding as someone off-screen spoke to her. And there, in the corner of the screen, was the uploaded ID. It was a scan of my driver's license, my real license, the one currently in my wallet. My stomach dropped. How did they get a high-resolution scan of my license? I leaned in closer. The woman on the screen looked familiar, but not in a way I could place immediately. It wasn't Kara. It wasn't anyone I knew well. It was a stranger wearing a Bella Griffin costume. "Who is she?" I whispered. "I don't know." Elias stammered. "She had the credentials. She knew the answers to the security questions. Previous addresses, loan amounts, car make and model. She knew everything. She knew everything because my family knows everything." I took a picture of the screen with my phone. Elias didn't try to stop me. He looked terrified. "If you transfer this record to anyone else, or if you delete it, I will sue you for everything you own." I said. I walked out of the shop, my heart hammering. The level of coordination was sickening. They had hired an actor, Or maybe Harborline had a roster of people who did this. I sat in my car and called Kara. She answered on the first ring, sounding breathless. Bella? October 14th. I said, What? Where were you on October 14th? I asked. I don't know. Kara stammered. That was months ago. Check your calendar. Kara, it is important. There was a pause. Then the sound of rustling. That was a Tuesday. She said, I was at Mom's. Gordon asked me to come over and help with some computer stuff. My grip on the steering wheel tightened. What kind of computer stuff? He said Mom needed to do a video call for the bank. Kara said, but the Wi-Fi was acting up. He wanted me to set up a hotspot. He said it was for the loan modification. Did you see the call? I asked. No, Kara said. Gordon made me take the kids to the park while they did it. He said it was confidential financial stuff, and he didn't want the boys making noise. I closed my eyes. It fit perfectly. Kara provided the tech support. Gordon cleared the house, and then they brought in the imposter. Kara, I said quietly, you didn't just witness a signature later. You set up the digital connection for a felony. What are you talking about? Kara's voice rose in panic. They used a fake me. Kara, they hired a woman to pretend to be me on that video call, and you set up the camera. No, she whispered. No, Gordon wouldn't. Gordon did. I said, and because you were there, and because you helped, you are an accessory. Bella, please, she sobbed. I didn't know. You never know. Kara, that is your defense for everything. But ignorance isn't going to keep you out of jail. I hung up. I couldn't listen to her cry anymore. Her weaponized incompetence had finally cost me too much. I drove back to Seabriar Cove, but instead of going home, I went to Marrow and Slate. I needed to know how much pressure Harborline was applying. Tessa Rowan was in her office, the door closed. When she saw me through the glass, she waved me in immediately. She looked like she hadn't slept. They sent a demand letter. Tessa said without preamble. She slid a heavy document across the desk. I picked it up. It was on letterhead from a law firm I recognized. A massive, aggressive corporate firm from the city, breach of contract, tortious interference, defamation. They are threatening to sue the brokerage for the full commission plus damages if we don't proceed with the closing tomorrow. Tessa said, My broker is freaking out. He wants to settle. He wants me to convince you to sign a release. They are trying to scare you. I said, It is working, Tessa admitted. Bella, these people are not normal investors. They are sharks. Evan Sutter called me an hour ago. He said if I don't get you to the table, he is going to file a complaint against my license alleging I colluded with you to defraud the buyer. He is projecting. I said, He is accusing you of exactly what he is doing. Tessa rubbed her temples. I know. But the threat is real. I could lose my livelihood. I looked at her. She was a luxury realtor in a small town. She wasn't built for this kind of war. But she was the only witness I had who could connect Gordon to Harborline through the staging invoice. I need you to hold the line, Tessa. I said, just for 24 hours. I am not going to let them win, she said, her voice shaking but firm. I pulled the file. I found something else. What? The deposit, she said. The earnest money. It wasn't wired from Harborline. It was wired from a shell company called Blue Water Holdings. So? I looked up Blue Water Holdings, Tessa said. The registered agent is Evan Sutter. But the mailing address? It matches the address for Pike Maritime Imports. I stared at her. Gordon isn't just the victim of a predatory loan. I said, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. He is a partner. He is trying to buy his own stepdaughter's house through a shell company. Tessa said, using Harborline's money as the front. It wasn't just theft. It was a coup. Gordon wanted the house. He wanted the asset. He probably planned to flip it later or keep it as a trophy, proving he had finally conquered me. I will protect you. Tessa, I said, I promise. But I need copies of that wire transfer. Take it, she said. I left the office and drove to my house. I needed to regroup. I needed to shower and wash the feeling of betrayal off my skin. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house was quiet. the beige furniture standing like silent sentinels. I walked to the kitchen and stopped. A drawer was open. It wasn't just any drawer. It was the junk drawer where I kept spare batteries, tape, and more importantly, my password notebook. I was old-fashioned. I wrote down my Wi-Fi passwords, my router admin codes, and the backup pins for my digital safe in a small black moleskin. I walked over to the drawer. The notebook was gone. I spun around, scanning the room. The house felt different. The air was disturbed. I ran to the office. My desk drawers were pulled open. My laptop, which I had left hidden under the mattress in the guest room, was untouched. Thank God I had moved it. But the drawer where I usually kept my external hard drives was empty. They had been here, while I was at the notary, while I was chasing paper trails. They had physically breached my home again. This wasn't about staging anymore. This was a hunt for data. They wanted access to my accounts. They wanted to stop me from funding the legal fight. I felt a violation so deep it made my skin crawl. This was my sanctuary. And they were walking through it like they owned it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I went cold. I pulled out my phone and dialed the police non-emergency line. I want to report a burglary. I said, and a case of identity theft. Detective Calvin Mott was a man who looked like he had seen too many tourists complain about noise violations. He stood in my living room, notebook in hand, looking at the open drawers with a skeptical expression. So, no forced entry? He asked. No. I said, they have a key, or they have the code. My stepfather and my mother have access. And you think your parents broke in to steal a notebook? Mott asked, raising an eyebrow. I think they are trying to steal my house. Detective, and I think they are trying to access my financial accounts to stop me from preventing the sale. Mott sighed, closing his notebook. Ms. Griffin, look, this sounds like a civil dispute, a family matter. You gave them access in the past. If they have a key, it is not technically breaking and entering. It is if I revoked their permission. I said, which I did. Did you change the locks? He asked. I am doing that today. I said, then until you do. It is a gray area. Look, I can take a report. But unless you have video of them taking the items, or unless they confess, this is not going to go far. We don't get involved in inheritance squabbles. It is not an inheritance squabble, I snapped. I am alive. They are forging my signature on a deed transfer. Mott held up a hand. Whoa, okay, calm down. If there is forgery, that is a crime. But you need to prove it. You need a handwriting expert. You need a court order. The police can't just arrest your dad because you say he signed your name. I have a fraudulent notary stamp. I said, I have a witness who says my sister helped set up a fake video call. Mott looked slightly more interested. Okay, bring that to the station. Make a package. If you give me hard evidence, I can open a fraud file. But right now, all I see is a messy family argument and a missing notebook. I realized then that he wasn't going to save me. The system was too slow. It required boxes of proof that would take weeks to assemble. And I had less than 24 hours before the closing. I will bring you the package, I said, my voice icy. And when you see what is in it, you are going to wish you had taken this seriously today. Mott shrugged. Just doing my job. Ma'am. He left. I locked the door and engaged the deadbolt. I dragged one of the heavy beige armchairs in front of the door. It was a primitive barricade, but it made me feel slightly better. I sat on the floor and opened my laptop. I changed every password I had. Bank accounts, email, brokerage, credit cards. I set up two-factor authentication on everything to ping my phone. Then I checked my social media. I rarely used it, but I needed to see what was happening in the family orbit. I saw a post from my aunt, a woman who lived 2 towns over. It was a photo of her and Diane, captioned, "Praying for my sister Diane during this difficult time. Mental illness is so hard on families. We love you. Bella. And we hope you get the help you need." I stared at the screen. Mental illness. Gordon had launched the narrative. He was telling everyone I was having a breakdown. That was why I was acting erratic. That was why I was fighting the sale. He was painting me as unstable so that if I tried to stop the closing, Everyone would just shake their heads and say, "Poor Bella. She's off her meds." It was brilliant, and it was monstrous. I felt a vibration in my pocket, a text from Raina. "Drafts are ready. Injunction petition and cease and desist orders. I am filing the petition electronically now, but we need to serve the notices physically to stop the closing tomorrow." "Do it," I typed back. "Serve everyone. Gordon, Harborline, the title company." "I am on it," Raina replied. "But Bella, I need you to be ready. When we serve these, the gloves come off. They will come for you. Let them come." I wrote. I put the phone down. The sun was setting, casting long, bruised shadows across the water. My phone rang again. It was Diane. I debated not answering. I didn't want to hear her lies, but I needed to know where her head was. I picked up. "Bella?" Her voice was thick, slurred. She had been drinking. "What do you want?" "Mom, please," she whispered. "Please just stop. He is so angry." "Good," I said. "He says you are ruining the family name," Diane said, sniffing. "He says everyone is going to know we are broke. He says you are making us look like criminals. You are criminals. Mom, you signed my name. You let a stranger pretend to be me." "I didn't know," she wailed. "I didn't know about the stranger. Gordon just said. He said it was a formality. I was so scared. Bella, the men who call the house about the debt. They are scary. Gordon said this was the only way to make them go away. So you threw me to the wolves to save yourself." I said, "I thought you would understand." She cried. "You are so strong. You always land on your feet. We are not like you. We break." I sat there, listening to the ocean and my mother's pathetic justification. She was right. They did break, and they expected me to be the glue, even if it meant melting me down to fix their cracks. I am not landing on my feet this time. "Mom," I said, "I am standing my ground. And if you are standing next to Gordon when I bring the hammer down, you are going to get hurt. Bella, please, don't do this. For the reputation, for your father's memory. Don't you dare mention Dad." I said, "He would have been ashamed of you." I hung up. I sat in the dark for a long time. The silence of the house was heavy, filled with the ghosts of the family I thought I had. Then, my email pinged. I opened it. The sender was anonymous 1984 Proton Mail, com. There was no subject line, just an image attachment. I clicked it. It was a screenshot of an internal chat platform, something like Slack or Teams. The channel was labeled Project Seaside Liquidity. There were 3 users in the chat: E. Sutter, G. Pike, and admin. E. Sutter. Owner returning to town. She is asking questions. G. Pike. She is unstable. I can manage her. Just get the papers ready. A. Sutter. Accelerate closing. Move it to noon tomorrow. G. Pike. I will work on the mother. She is wobbly. A. Sutter. Use mother pressure. Keep Realtor contained. If the deal doesn't close by Friday, the hard money lenders are going to strip your inventory. G. Pike. It will close. I will make sure she doesn't show up. I stared at the last line. I will make sure she doesn't show up. It was a threat. A physical threat. I looked at the timestamp. It was from 2 days ago. Someone inside Harborline, or someone with access to Gordon's computer, had sent this to me. A whistleblower? Or Kara, trying to redeem herself in the pettiest way possible? It didn't matter. I had the playbook. They were going to try to physically stop me from attending the closing. I stood up and walked to the window. I checked the locks again. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting for my survival. I forwarded the screenshot to Raina and to Detective Mott. Context for the fraud file. I typed to Mott, and if I go missing tomorrow, check Gordon Pike's trunk. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the beige armchair facing the door, listening to the wind, waiting for the sun to rise on the day I would burn my family down. The morning of the closing arrived with a deceptively calm sky, a flat sheet of slate gray that matched the suit I had chosen to wear. I dressed with the precision of a soldier preparing for a tribunal: navy wool trousers, a silk blouse that buttoned to the throat, and a blazer that was sharp enough to cut glass. I did not look like a grieving daughter or a confused heir. I looked like what I was, a consultant who dismantled failing companies for a living. Raina was already in my kitchen, reviewing the stack of files we had assembled. She looked tired but wired, the way lawyers get when they smell blood in the water. "They haven't canceled," she said, not looking up from her iPad. "Suncoast title confirms the room is booked for 12 o'clock. Harborline is pretending your injunction doesn't exist. They are betting I won't show up," I said, pouring black coffee into a travel mug. "Or they are betting that if I do, Gordon can bully me into submission before the notary caps her pen." My phone buzzed on the counter. It was Tessa Rowan. I picked it up. "Tessa?" "I found the backup," Tessa said, her voice dropping to a whisper. She sounded like she was hiding in a supply closet. "Bella, Harborline isn't keeping the house. They already have a contract drawn up to flip it at 2 o'clock today." "Flip it to who?" I asked. "A company called Crown Meridian Holdings," Tessa said. "I ran the corporate entity search. It is a shell registered in Delaware 3 days ago. But the authorized signer? It is a known associate of Evan Sutter. They are selling it to themselves for $1.1 million. And then Crown Meridian is listing it on the private market for $1.6 million tomorrow." The math hit me instantly. They were stripping $500,000 of equity out of my property in a single afternoon. Gordon would get his debt cleared, Harborline would take a massive fee, and this Crown Meridian entity, Sutter and his cronies, would pocket $500,000 of my money. "And let me guess," I said, "the family gets nothing but a clean slate on bad debt." "Exactly," Tessa said. "It is a smash and grab. Speed and confusion are their only weapons. If we slow them down, the whole chain collapses. I will see you there." "Tessa," I said, "do not back down." "I am terrified," she admitted, "but I am coming." I hung up. The scale of the theft was becoming clearer. It wasn't just desperation. It was an industry. My family was just the raw material. My laptop chimed. A forwarded email. I checked the sender. It was Kara. I stared at the name. My sister, who had hung up on me yesterday in a panic, had sent me something. The subject line was simple. "FWD. Strategy for B." I opened it. It was an email thread between Gordon and Evan Sutter, dated 2 weeks ago. From G. Pike to E. Sutter. Subject, handling the owner. "Evan, she is coming to town next week. We need to have the papers ready to sign immediately. If she hesitates, I will handle the pressure. The key is to make her feel selfish. She has always felt guilty about being the successful one. We need to lean on that. Tell her the mother is on the brink of a heart attack. Make it medical. She will pay to fix a medical problem. She won't pay to fix a business mistake." I read the line again. Make her feel selfish. It was the playbook of my entire life. Every time I had set a boundary, every time I had missed a birthday for a board meeting, every time I had bought something nice for myself, Gordon had been there with a subtle comment about how much the family sacrificed, how lucky I was, how hard it was for everyone else. He had weaponized my own empathy. He had turned my love for my mother into a lever he could pull whenever he needed cash. I didn't feel hurt. I felt a cold, clarifying rage. The last vestige of guilt evaporated. I wasn't fighting my family anymore. I was fighting a parasite. I looked at Raina. "Let's go," I said. We had one stop to make before the title company. I drove to the Victorian house. I knew Gordon would be at the marina or already at the closing. Posturing. I needed 5 minutes with Diane alone. I parked around the block and walked to the side door. I didn't knock. I used my key, the one they hadn't managed to take back yet. Diane was in the living room, dressed in a black dress that made her look like a widow. She was pacing, wringing her hands, her makeup already smudged. When she saw me, she froze. "You are not supposed to be here," she whispered. Gordon said, "Stop talking about what Gordon said," I interrupted. I walked over to her. She looked small, frail. It was hard to reconcile this trembling woman with the person who had sat in front of a camera and pretended to be me. "I have a proposition." "Mom," I said. Diane blinked, confusion clouding her eyes. "I know about the debt," I said. "I know about Pike Maritime. I know you co-signed everything. She let out a sob. We are going to lose the house. Bella, we are going to lose everything. I can stop the collectors. I said. Her head snapped up. What? I have money. Mom, I have liquid capital. I can pay off the immediate judgments against you. I can restructure the loans on this house so you don't lose it. I can save you from bankruptcy. Hope flooded her face, desperate and pathetic. You would do that? After everything? There is a condition. I said. Diane waited, her hands trembling. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single sheet of paper. Raina had drafted it this morning. It was a sworn affidavit. You sign this. I said. What is it? It is a statement. I said. It says that Gordon Pike directed you to impersonate me. It says that he organized the fraud. It says that you acted under duress and coercion. Diane recoiled as if the paper were radioactive. I can't, she whispered. He is my husband. Bella, he is using you as a human shield. I said, when the police come, and they are coming, Mom, Gordon is going to say you did it all. He is going to say you were the one who signed the papers. He is going to let you go to prison to save himself. He wouldn't, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Read the email. I said, holding up my phone with the thread Kara had sent. Read what he wrote about you. Tell her the mother is on the brink of a heart attack. Use it. She read the screen. I watched the words sink in. I watched her realize that her husband didn't see her as a partner, but as a prop in a con game. I will pay the debts. I said, I will hire you a lawyer, but you have to choose. Right now, are you his accomplice, or are you my mother? Diane looked at the affidavit. She picked up a pen from the coffee table. Her hand hovered over the paper. I can't sign this now, she said, her voice shaking. He will see it. He will know. Then tell the truth at the closing. I said, when we walk into that room, do not lie for him. If you lie for him today, I walk away. I let the house sell. I sue you for fraud, and I leave you to the sharks. I turned and walked to the door. Bella, she called out. I stopped. I am scared, she whispered. You should be, I said. I left her there. I didn't know if she would do it. Diane had spent 30 years choosing the path of least resistance. But I had planted the seed. I met Raina and our security consultant in the parking lot of a diner down the street from Suncoast Title. The consultant's name was Vance. He was 6'4", dressed in a dark suit, with the calm demeanor of a man who had handled situations much worse than a real estate dispute. I had hired him because I remembered the threat in the chat log. I will make sure she doesn't show up. Detective Mott is parked across the street in an unmarked sedan. Vance said, he says he can't come in unless a crime is in progress. But he is listening. Fraud is a crime in progress. Raina noted. Let's go. I said, Suncoast Title and Escrow was located in a generic office park. The lobby was filled with fake plants and the smell of stale coffee. We didn't stop at the reception desk. We walked straight back to the conference room at the end of the hall. The door was closed. I could hear voices inside. Gordon's booming laugh. Evan Sutter's smooth baritone. I nodded to Vance. He opened the door and stepped aside. I walked in. The room went silent. It was a large table. On one side sat Gordon, Diane, and Kara. Kara looked like she was going to be sick. She was staring at the table. Diane was pale, clutching her purse. Gordon was leaning back in his chair, looking relaxed. On the other side sat Evan Sutter and two other men in suits, lawyers or thugs. It didn't matter. And at the head of the table sat the escrow officer, a woman who looked eager to get this over with. Bella, Gordon said. His voice was warm, welcoming, completely at odds with the email he had written. We didn't think you were going to make it. Grab a chair. We are just getting to the signature pages. I didn't sit. I stood at the end of the table. Vance stood behind me, blocking the door. Raina moved to the side, placing her briefcase on a side table and opening it. I am not here to sign. Gordon, I said. Evan Sutter sighed loudly. He clicked his pen. Ms. Griffin, please. We have been through this. The family has come to an agreement. We have a schedule to keep. There is no agreement, I said. Tessa Rowan was sitting in the corner, looking small in a large leather chair. When I spoke, she stood up. Her hands were shaking, but she walked to the table. I have verified the owner of record, Tessa said, her voice trembling but audible. The owner is Bella Griffin. She is present, and she disputes the listing authority. Sutter turned his cold eyes on Tessa. Ms. Rowan, be very careful. You are obstructing a contract. I am following the law, Tessa said. Gordon stood up. He smiled at me, a tight, patronizing smile. Bella, honey, you are making a scene. We discussed this. It is a loan, a temporary restructure. Your mother needs this. Don't be selfish. There was that word again. Selfish. I looked at him. I looked at the man who had lived in my mother's house for 20 years, who had eaten at our table, who had pretended to be a father. I am not selfish. Gordon, I said, I am just awake. Sutter signaled to one of the lawyers. The man slid a document across the table toward me. If you are going to be difficult, Sutter said, we can do this the hard way. This is a family settlement agreement. It acknowledges that you granted power of attorney to your mother in exchange for the family assuming certain liabilities of yours. It dates back to January. I looked at the document. It had signatures on it. Kara's signature, Diane's signature, and a signature that looked like mine. You forged another one? I asked, genuinely amazed by their audacity. We didn't forge anything, Gordon said smoothly. You signed that when you were down for Christmas. You probably forgot. You were drinking a lot that weekend. The gaslighting was breathtaking. He was rewriting history in real time, in front of witnesses. I looked at Kara. Did I sign this? Kara? I asked. Kara looked up. Her eyes were red. She looked at Gordon, then at me. Kara, Gordon warned. Kara put her head in her hands and began to cry. She didn't speak. She was useless. I turned to the escrow officer. Ma'am, stop the transaction. I said. The officer looked nervous. I have a valid purchase agreement. I have a power of attorney recorded with the county, unless there is a court order. Raina stepped forward. Here is the court order, she said, slamming the file onto the table, or rather, the petition for the injunction filed this morning. And here is the notice of pendency of action. The title is frozen. You cannot issue insurance. If you disperse funds today, you are facilitating a felony. Sutter laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound. A petition isn't an order. We can close around a petition. We will bond around it. He looked at Gordon. Sign the deed. Diane, use the power of attorney. We are done talking. Diane looked at the deed in front of her. Gordon nudged her arm. Sign it. Di, he muttered. Just sign it and we go home. I walked to the table. I placed my hand on the deed, covering the signature line. Sutter's men stood up. Vance took a step forward, his size suddenly filling the room. The men sat back down. I opened my folder. I pulled out the first photo, the screenshot of the remote notary session, the woman who wasn't me. This is the person who signed the power of attorney on October 14th. I said. The room went quiet. Gordon stared at the photo. A muscle in his jaw jumped. I pulled out the second paper, the flight records. I was in London on October 14th. I said, I have passport stamps. I have hotel receipts. I pulled out the third paper, the email thread from Kara, the one where Gordon instructed Sutter to make her feel selfish. And this, I said, looking at Sutter, is your conspiracy to commit fraud. Sutter's face didn't change, but his eyes went dead. He knew the deal was dead. He was already calculating his exposure. This is fabricated, Gordon said, his voice rising. She is hysterical. She forged these emails. I looked at Diane. She was staring at the photo of the fake Bella. Mom, I said. Diane looked up. Her face was a mask of misery. Gordon leaned in, whispering hissingly in her ear. Don't say a word. Diane, not a word. Mom, I said again, look at the photo. Diane looked at the photo. Then she looked at Gordon. She saw the sweat on his forehead. She saw the desperation in his eyes. She saw the man who had promised to protect her, now trying to force her to commit a crime in front of a room full of people. She took a deep breath. I never watched Bella sign that power of attorney, she said. Her voice was quiet, but in the silence of the room, it sounded like a gunshot. Gordon froze. What did you say? He snapped. Diane pushed the deed away. Her hand was shaking, but she kept it away from her. I said I never saw her sign it, Diane repeated, louder this time. You brought it to me already signed. You told me she signed it remotely. You told me it was legal. You are confused, Gordon said through gritted teeth. You were there. I wasn't, Diane said. She looked at me, and for the first time in years, I saw my mother, not the victim, not the wife, my mother. I wasn't there, she said, and neither was Bella. The escrow officer stood up. She closed her laptop. I am stopping the closing, she said. We cannot proceed with the disputed power of attorney. Sutter stood up. He buttoned his jacket. He looked at Gordon with pure contempt. You said you had control of your house. Pike, Sutter said. I do, Gordon shouted, slamming his fist on the table. She is lying. She is off her meds. Sutter didn't even look at him. He looked at me. We will see you in court. Ms. Griffin, Harborline has a valid contract. We will sue for specific performance. You can try, Raina said, but we will be deposing you about Crown Meridian Holdings and the backup offer. Sutter paused. He looked at Tessa. He knew exactly where that leak had come from. He walked out of the room, his team trailing behind him. The room felt suddenly empty, leaving only the wreckage of my family. Gordon stood there, his chest heaving. He looked at Diane. You stupid woman, he hissed. You just ruined us. Do you know what you just did? The loans are called. The inventory is seized. We are bankrupt. I did not ruin us, Diane said, tears streaming down her face. You did. Gordon turned to me. His face was red, ugly, stripped of all its pretenses. You think you won? He spat. You think this makes you strong? You are nothing without this family. You are a cold, lonely workaholic who cares more about a beach house than her own flesh and blood. I looked at him. I felt tired, but I felt clean. Get out, I said. This isn't your office. Bella? No, I said, but the police are outside, and I think Detective Mott would be very interested to hear Diane repeat what she just said. Gordon looked at the door. He looked at Vance. He looked at the defeat in Diane's posture. He grabbed his briefcase. You will regret this, he said. Both of you. He stormed out. Kara was still crying, her head on the table. Diane was staring at her hands. I looked at the escrow officer. Is it over? I asked. The officer nodded, looking shaken. The file is closed. I will mark the title as disputed. No one can touch it. Thank you, I said. I walked over to Diane. She didn't look up. Mom, I said. She flinched. I am sorry, she whispered. I know, I said, but sorry doesn't fix the signature. I looked at Raina. Serve them, I said. Raina pulled the formal legal notices from her bag. She handed one to Diane. She slid one across the table to Kara. What is this? Kara asked, lifting her tear-stained face. It is a notice of a civil suit, Raina said, for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. Diane looked at me, her eyes wide with shock. Bella, you are suing us? But I told the truth. I stopped the sale. You stopped the sale today, I said, but you started the fire 3 months ago. You signed the papers. Mom, you let them in. You need to answer for that. But we are family, she whispered. I looked at the beige walls of the conference room. I thought about my empty file box. I thought about the fake assistant. I thought about the woman on the video call wearing my face. I know. I said, that is why it hurts. I turned and walked out of the room. Vance fell in step behind me. I walked out into the parking lot. The sun had broken through the gray clouds. It was bright, blindingly so. I saw Detective Mott standing by his car. He gave me a nod. He had seen Gordon storm out. He knew the tide had turned. I unlocked my car and sat in the driver's seat. My hands were finally shaking. The adrenaline was crashing. I had saved the house. I had stopped the theft. But as I looked back at the nondescript office building, I knew I hadn't won. I had just survived the amputation. The limb was gone, and now I had to learn how to live without it. My phone buzzed. A text from Raina. Harborline just filed a lis pendens on the property. They are claiming breach of contract. And Bella. They named Diane as a co-defendant. They are saying she represented herself as having authority and defrauded them. I stared at the screen. They were eating their own. Harborline was turning on Gordon and Diane to save their own skin. They would claim they were innocent victims of my mother's lies. The war wasn't over. It was just moving to a different battlefield. I put the car in gear and drove toward the ocean. I needed to see my house. I needed to change the locks. And then I needed to figure out if I could ever sleep there again. The silence that followed my mother's admission was absolute. It was the kind of silence that sucks the oxygen out of a room, leaving everyone gasping for air. Diane had spoken the sentence that unraveled the entire tapestry of lies Gordon had spent months weaving. I never watched Bella sign that power of attorney. Gordon stared at her, his mouth slightly open, the color draining from his face until he looked like a wax figure melting under the fluorescent lights. The escrow officer, whose hand had been hovering over the check printer, pulled her hand back as if the machine were burning hot. "I am pausing all proceedings," the officer announced, her voice trembling but final. She closed the laptop with a decisive snap. "The transaction is flagged. The funds are frozen." That was the signal. Raina moved forward from the corner of the room. She didn't rush. She moved with the terrifying calm of a lawyer who knows she has already won the war and is just conducting the execution. She slapped a heavy stack of documents onto the mahogany table. The sound echoed like a gavel strike. "You are formally served," Raina said, looking directly at Evan Sutter. "This is an immediate injunction against Harborline Capital Solutions and Pike Maritime Imports. We are also filing a formal notice of fraud with the State Attorney General's office regarding the notary misconduct at Bramble and Quill." Evan Sutter didn't flinch. He sat back in his chair, buttoning his suit jacket with slow, deliberate movements. He looked at the paperwork, then at me. The predatory charm was gone, replaced by a cold, reptilian indifference. "You think this is a victory, Ms. Griffin?" Sutter asked softly. "I think it is a stop," I said. My hands were gripping the back of the leather chair, shaking so hard I had to lock my elbows to keep them steady. "You are stopping a sale," Sutter said, his eyes drilling into mine, "but you are starting a demolition. Do you know what happens when we pull the plug on Pike Maritime? The debt does not vanish. It accelerates. The creditors will file by Monday. The foreclosure on your mother's house will be public record by Wednesday. Everyone in this town will know the Griffins are destitute. Let them know," I said. Sutter smiled, a thin, cruel expression. "And you, the successful daughter, the one who could have saved them with the stroke of a pen but chose to let them drown. You will lose the family anyway. Bella, you are saving a building and losing your soul." I felt the sting of his words. They were designed to find the crack in my armor, the part of me that had spent 30 years trying to be the savior. But as I looked at him, a man who monetized family trauma, I realized my soul wasn't on that table. "My soul is not in your ledger, Mr. Sutter," I said, my voice finding its steel. "And neither is my house." Gordon exploded. It wasn't physical. Vance, my security consultant, was standing too close for that. It was a verbal eruption, a dam breaking after years of holding back his resentment. He slammed his palms against the table, making the water glasses jump. "You ungrateful little brat," Gordon shouted, his face turning a mottled purple. "You stand there in your $1,000 suit and judge us? After everything we did for you?" I stared at him. "What did you do for me?" "Gordon, we gave you a home," he roared. "We gave you stability. I took you in when your father died. I raised you. And this is how you repay me? By humiliating me in front of business partners? By calling the police on your own mother?" I didn't yell back. I lowered my voice, forcing him to lean in to hear me. "You didn't give me stability. Gordon," I said, "you gave me chaos. I have been cleaning up your messes since I was 16 years old. I paid for my own college so you wouldn't have to leverage the house. I paid for Kara's wedding. I paid for the new roof on the Victorian. That is what families do. Gordon spat. They share. They don't steal. I said, this beach house was the first thing I ever built that didn't belong to you. It was the first thing I owned that you couldn't control. And that is why you hate it. That is why you tried to sell it. Not for the money, but because it proved I didn't need you. Gordon opened his mouth to argue, but the truth of it seemed to choke him. He looked at Diane, looking for support, but she was staring at her hands. Kara, who had been sobbing quietly, suddenly made a sound, a sharp, ragged intake of breath. She looked up. Her mascara was running down her face, making her look like a tragic clown. He told me it was standard. She whispered. We all turned to her. He told me, Kara stammered, pointing a shaking finger at Gordon. He told me that validating the documents was just a technicality. He said that because Mom had power of attorney, it was okay to use a digital signature. I didn't understand the forms. I just wanted him to stop yelling about the money. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. I am sorry. Bella, she said, her voice cracked, stripping away the defensive sarcasm she usually wore. I was just so scared. I didn't want to lose my house. I didn't want to be poor. I am weak. I know I am weak. It wasn't a movie redemption. She didn't offer to testify. She didn't stand up and fight. She just admitted, finally, that she was a coward. And in that moment, I didn't hate her. I just pitied her. You need a lawyer. Kara, I said gently. Tessa Rowan stepped forward. She was pale, but she held her head high. I am filing a formal broker report with the licensing board, Tessa stated. Looking at Sutter, I am submitting the emails regarding the staging, the fake assistant, and the shell company backup offer. I will cooperate fully with any investigation. Sutter laughed. You will never sell a luxury home in this state again, he warned. I don't care, Tessa said. I am not going to jail for you. The door opened, and Detective Calvin Mott walked in. He didn't look bored anymore. He looked like a man who had heard enough through the thin walls to know he had a case. Everyone stay seated, Mott said, closing the door behind him. Sutter's legal team immediately began packing their briefcases. We are leaving, Sutter said. We are not under arrest. This is a civil dispute. You are not leaving until I get statements, Mott said, crossing his arms. We have an allegation of notary fraud and identity theft. And we have a witness, Ms. Griffin's mother, who just stated on the record that the signature was falsified. Sutter looked at his lawyers. They whispered something to him. The confidence finally drained out of his posture. He wasn't running the room anymore. He was just a suspect in a suit. We have no comment, Sutter said stiffly. We will communicate through our counsel. They retreated into legal silence, the air of invincibility evaporating. They were just men who had been caught. I looked at the title officer. Is the deed dead? I asked. She nodded. Dead. I have flagged the parcel number. Nothing moves without a judge's order. I turned to go. I couldn't be in that room for another second. The smell of fear and cheap cologne was making me nauseous. I walked out into the hallway, Vance close behind me. Bella. It was Diane. She had followed me out. She looked smaller than ever. A ghost in a black dress. I stopped, but I didn't turn around. Please, she begged. Her voice was a jagged whisper. Please don't ruin us. If you pursue the fraud charges, Gordon will go to prison. I will lose the pension. We will be on the street. I turned slowly. I looked at the woman who had given birth to me, who had let a man convince her that my safety was a fair price for her comfort. You are asking me for mercy. I said, yes. She wept. Please, we are family. Where was the mercy when you let a stranger into my house? I asked. Where was the mercy when you signed the paper that would have evicted me from my own life? I didn't think, she sobbed. That is the problem. Mom, I said, you never think. You just feel, and you expect me to pay for it. I took a step back, putting distance between us. Physical distance, emotional distance. I am not going to ruin you, I said quietly. You already tried to ruin me. I am just not cooperating anymore. I am done fixing it. But what will we do? She asked. Helpless? I don't know. I said, and for the first time in my life, that is not my problem. I walked away. I walked out of the building, into the bright, blinding sun. I heard her calling my name, but it sounded like a sound from a dream I was waking up from. I got into my car. Raina got in the passenger seat. Vance got in the back. Are you okay? Raina asked. No, I said, but I am free. We drove straight to the hardware store. I bought 3 new deadbolts, a set of heavy-duty strike plates, and a wireless camera system. Then we went to the house. I spent the afternoon exorcising them from the property. I removed the beige staging furniture, dragging the linen love seats into the garage myself. Sweating through my silk blouse, I took down the generic art. I put my photos back on the walls. I changed every lock. I installed cameras at the front door, the back door, and the driveway. I called the credit bureaus and froze my files so tight that not even I could open a new account without a week of paperwork. By sunset, the house was a fortress. Raina and Vance left around 6 o'clock. I was alone. I poured a glass of wine and walked out onto the deck. The ocean was dark, the waves crashing with a rhythmic, indifferent violence. I sat in one of the Adirondack chairs and listened to the sound of the water. I should have felt triumphant. I had won. The house was mine. The sale was dead. The predators were retreating, but I didn't feel triumph. I felt a hollow, aching grief. I grieved for the mother I wished I had, one who would have protected me, not sacrificed me. I grieved for the sister I wished Kara could be, one who had a spine. I grieved for the illusion of family I had clung to for 30 years. I realized then that the beach house wasn't just a building. It was the only place where I had ever been safe, and I had to fight the people who were supposed to love me to keep it. That was the tragedy. The victory was just that I still had a roof over my head while I cried. The sound of tires on gravel made me jump. I checked the camera feed on my phone. It wasn't Gordon. It was a courier van. I walked to the front door, checking the new monitor. The driver left a large envelope on the porch and drove away. I opened the door and retrieved it. It was a certified letter. I took it to the kitchen and opened it under the harsh light of the island pendant. It was from the legal department of Harborline Capital Solutions. Civil complaint and demand for arbitration. I scanned the legalese. They were suing to recover their losses, the staging costs, the appraisal fees, the legal billable hours. But then I saw the second paragraph, cross-complaint against third-party defendants. Harborline Capital Solutions hereby asserts claims against Diane Pike and Gordon Pike for fraud, misrepresentation, and breach of warranty of authority. I read on. Defendant Diane Pike did knowingly and willfully represent herself as the authorized agent of the property, executing documents she knew to be false. Harborline Capital Solutions asserts that it is the victim of a conspiracy by the Pike family to defraud a legitimate investor. My breath caught in my throat. They were turning on her. Evan Sutter wasn't going to take the fall for the fraud. He was going to claim that he was an innocent businessman duped by a lying mother. He was pointing the entire legal canon at Diane, and the kicker was in the final sentence. Plaintiff seeks damages in the amount of $200,000 to be secured by the assets of the defendants, including but not limited to their primary residence. They were going to take the Victorian house. I lowered the letter. Diane had begged me not to ruin them. She had been so afraid of me. She hadn't realized that the wolf was already in the house. By signing that settlement agreement today, by trying to play both sides, she had given Harborline exactly what they needed, a signature that proved she was part of the deal. She had flipped under pressure to save Gordon, and in doing so, she had handed Evan Sutter the weapon to destroy her. I walked back out to the deck. The wind had picked up, cold and biting. I held the letter in my hand. I could call Raina. I could tell her to intervene. I could use my resources to fight Harborline on Diane's behalf, to argue that she was coerced. I could spend another $100,000 saving my mother from the consequences of her own weakness. I looked out at the black water. I thought about the fake assistant. I thought about the beige furniture. I thought about the email. Make her feel selfish. I took out my phone. I dialed Raina. She answered on the second ring. Did you get served? She asked. I got a copy. I said, Harborline is suing Diane. They are going to take her house. There was a long silence on the line. Raina waited. She knew the stakes. Do you want me to file a defense for her? Raina asked. I looked at the house around me. My sanctuary. My walls. My life. I closed my eyes. No. I said, Bella? No. I repeated, my voice steady. Represent me. Protect this property. But Diane has to handle her own defense. Are you sure? Raina asked softly. If they take the Victorian, she has nowhere to go. I know. I said. I hung up. I stood there for a long time, holding the phone. I was an orphan now, not by death, but by decision. I turned and walked back inside. I locked the new deadbolt. I set the alarm. I turned off the lights, leaving only the glow of the moon on the floorboards. I was alone, and for the first time in 33 years, it didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a beginning. I looked out at the water one last time, listening to the tide pull away from the shore, taking the wreckage with it. Thank you for listening to this story. It was a journey into the dark complexities of family, trust, and the boundaries we must sometimes set to save ourselves. I hope Bella's fight resonated with you. I would love to hear from you. Please leave a comment below telling me where you are listening from and share your thoughts on Bella's final decision. Did she do the right thing? If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more narratives about justice, resilience, and the turning of tables. Until next time.